You know, I was brought up not to be guilty for being white, but knowing about how, you know, my dad's dad and other folks had been some of the first Republicans after the Civil War, you know, in Texas and running for office and getting elected and things like that. And, you know, the fact that, you know, we're not low-level people. We don't put down other groups so we feel bigger. Even if some of those groups through class envy don't like us, we're trying to build everybody up and things like that. You know, I remember repeatedly, because my grandmother would stop on the side of the road and take old black ladies, drive them to their houses or stuff like that. And my grandfather was a county tax assessor, amongst other things. And literally every Thanksgiving, there'd be like 10, 15 old black ladies delivering pies to our house. Because, I mean, my grandfather did stuff like just poor people didn't have to pay taxes in the county on the property. It just didn't happen. And he would go, like I said, talk to a more wealthy neighbor and said, I'm going to increase your property taxes. Is that okay? So we're not going to run this old lady out of her house. You're going to do that, right? And you compare that to the scum that is all over us in this country today, and it makes me want to throw up. And then filthy trash like George Soros that rounded up his own thousands of his own Jews. That piece of demon filth is out against me and my family and sending his so-called journalists in to try to destroy my life, try to take my children away from me, and just plastering garbage everywhere. And I have to look at these sacks of trash. And I have to sit there and put up with it because the public's asleep. I mean, if the public knew how bad these enemies were, you would not put up with it for 1 second. And I know you know that. And the big crushing blow many times misses the mark, but the stoic, continual pound will win. The continued medium blow is how we're going to bring these people down. But I don't feel sorry for myself. I just get frustrated that people don't understand the level of literal garbage we're dealing with, where the Democratic Party is the KKK. They're the race party. They're trying to turn the minorities into a bunch of racist scum. They hype race continually, and I, at least twice, and at least twice too, separately, 4 times in front of my grandmother, watch people in the grocery store. Happened twice in the grocery store. I'd go stay there in the summers when I was a little kid. Walk over to her and call her a N-word lover. And then imagine when I see racist blacks going, F you in the street, Alex Jones. We're going to kick your ass, cracker. So I get the best of both worlds. My grandmother helped black people and didn't look down on them and was a good person and fought for them to have a better life. And then I have the racist black people after me. And then this has happened with East Texas stuff, where my great-grandfather traded like 140 acres to a old black lady and her husband so they could live up on the road. And then 3 generations later, SJWIs literally showing up at our farmhouse are racist black people saying, you took our land, and then trying to sue to get it. And, of course, they lost when we had the deed and traded them land. I mean, it's just like no good deed goes unpunished. And so that's why I know why people decide to be evil who aren't actually evil. They say, well, it's been done to me. Somebody was racist to me. I'm black. I'm going to be racist. Or I'm white. Somebody's racist to me. I'm going to be racist. And I just can't do that. Like Martin Luther King said, just because, and I'm not exaggerating, I grew up in Dallas. I grew up where there was a big black neighborhood in our area that was segregated, basically. And I had a lot of black friends, and most of them were great people. But you'd go to that neighborhood, people would say, what the hell is that honky doing in here? And old guys would come out with their shotguns, and I was so mindless, I didn't care. I just laughed about it because I wasn't racist. And I just thought the black people were fun to hang out with. They were always having fun. And that's the reality. You think these leftists are actually hanging around in black neighborhoods when they're 10 years old? Think Joe Biden ever did that? Yeah. You get around Democrats, I never heard the N-word except out of black people's mouths, except when I finally got around Democrats and people on the East Coast. And I'm not knocking folks on the East Coast. I'm talking fact here today, ladies and gentlemen. I don't need to sit here and say I had a lot of black friends or my sister's Korean adopted or blah, 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 blah. to prove I'm somebody that is nice. I'm seen as a schmuck by the Democrats and the racists and the controllers because I don't sit there and hate you. And see, the ultimate racists play into all this. I'm going to play Trump's speech here in a minute. The ultimate racists play into this because they're the ones that use it off against each other. Because they just get it's a tool of control. And they get it's powerful. And that's what's so sick about all this. I'm not going to exaggerate. That's the problem with having such a crazy life, is that you don't want to exaggerate, but then the truth sounds completely crazy. But I remember folks around here at the office going, you got in 100 fights with black people. You know, if it wasn't 100, it was probably 85. I mean, I really think about all the fights I got in where I was so unracist. When black people would attack me, I wouldn't run. I'd go ahead and fight them. McBreen was down there one time at the Texas Relays with a bunch of black coaches drinking beer, and they said, oh, we went to school, Alex. He was a really nice guy. He wasn't racist, even though some of the black folks were racist and attacked him. McBreen sat there for 2 hours drinking with these black coaches I went to high school with, I'll tell you. And, some big black guys hurt me bad. I'd black out, put them in a coma. My dad gets sued. We'd get out of it because I didn't do it. I didn't start the fight. But I mean, let me tell you, the average black person hasn't been attacked by white people 5 times in their life. I've had black people try to beat my brains out and do a good job of it probably 30, 40 times. I mean, most of those 100 fights were elementary, middle school, and that's why it could be 100. I mean, we're talking one every couple of days. Were kids that had flunked 2, 3 grades start a fight with me. I'd be fighting black kids, Hispanic kids, that had mustaches. And they were beating me up because I was a white kid. They were racist. They wanted to get back at Whitey. But then their mamas would get so mad a couple of years later they started a fight. They'd have blood coming out of their ears. And that's not about being tough. It's about not laying down. And I'm not laying down any of this crap on Martin Luther King Day, because Martin Luther King was a good man that had a good message, and bad things were happening to black people. But that doesn't mean then you pay it forward and crap on white people just because somebody screwed you around. And I know most black folks aren't like that. But the point is, it's sick to sit here. But it's sick to sit here and watch the leftists play games with everybody's minds, because I remember the other group I had to fight all the time, and they acted just like the blacks and just like the Mexicans. Mexicans didn't start as often, but I got beat. I got hurt more by Mexicans per capita than fighting big black guys. And then separately, rednecks. And by redneck, I can say that because I'm a white guy. Little groups of white guys, crap kickers, whatever you call it. I'm driving a pickup truck, too. But they would just want, this is the guy who beats everybody's ass? I mean, I had to get in fights because I'd beat up, their cousin who was 16 when I was 14. Pretty soon I looked like I was 20 when I was 14. There'd be some 25-year-old man in the McDonald's parking lot trying to put my head to concrete. You know what? I beat his brains out. That's what I did. Anyways, I shouldn't sit there and get off into old stories. The point is that the tough guy country boys like to act like gangs and start fights with people. And they would all hang out in their own gangs, I guess, so they wouldn't get in fights with the other people. I didn't really hang out in groups. I was always chasing girls around successfully. And that's why I guess a lot of stuff happened. And once that guy thinks he's tough. It was just constantly like a Western or something where, this guy thinks he's a fast draw with his gun or whatever. And the point I was getting at is I still don't blame black people and think in general they're bad, even though almost every one of those fights got started. And it was all because I fought back starting in like the 6th grade. And it was just on and on and on and on. And I mean, I'd be anywhere, just you name it. Field house, the movies, and folks would say whether they were rednecks or whether they were black folks, particularly rednecks and black folks, but mainly black folks. People be talking, they'd say something, and somebody come over and start a fight. I remember sometimes like 50-year-old men, like 6'6", he would say their names right here today, walking over to me and saying, "You think you're tough? I'll kick your ass." Some giant 50, 60-year-old black guy. And I'm just like, listen, I'm not looking for any trouble here. And I'm not telling those stories to act tough. So I've had broken arms, broken legs, concussions, whole 9 yards. The point is that you get pretty high when you're fighting some guy that outweighs you by 150 pounds. I mean, that just kicks in. You either do it or you die. But I'm not sitting here hating anybody just because there's a bunch of racist black people. But I am not going to sit there then, and I am not going to sit there and play along like I did something. And it's just a mess, ladies and gentlemen. The society is falling apart, and it's all gang garbage. Just like you go to a prison, you got the white area, the black area, the Hispanic area. If you're in, the East Coast, there's an Asian area, and they're all their own area, and that's how they control us, and that's my message on Martin Luther King Day. I was brought up not to be guilty for being white, but knowing about how